The COVID-19 pandemic had a stranglehold on the box office, but this week we went back to the movies and we're here to talk about it on this episode of Script or Screen.
Greetings and welcome to all of our lovely viewers. My name is Christopher Kitchen. I am joined by my co-host, Zach Strackman.
Hello.
And our new co-host, my neighbor's dog, who keeps barking outside. How are you doing this evening, Zach?
Oh, I'm doing not too bad, all things considered. How about yourself?
All things considered, I would love to have a nice quiet recording session, but,
Hey, he's a fan.
We don't get the luxury.
He's our first fan, and for anyone listening, thanks for taking the time. We appreciate your ears.
Absolutely. It's been an interesting week in the world of cinema with the later releases of some movies.
We're finally going back. We're finally going back to the movies.
We are. We finally today. Well, I guess I'd considered yesterday my first experience going really back to the movies. Although I said in a previous episode that I had recently went to see New Mutants. However, I was one of 3 people in that movie theater, and so it was nice. But what was interesting was this experience as we went to see Tenet, the long-awaited, 3 times delayed Christopher Nolan film. His follow-up to Dunkirk, and I guess the rest of his cinematography, his filmography. Excuse me.
It's the film I feel like everyone had been waiting for. How could it be anything except extraordinary? I think we'll start this off by kind of giving some non-spoilery kind of just general thoughts about it, and then we'll give a little warning, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, but I mean, Zach, this is the first time that you and I have been to the movies together. I feel like since Joker, actually. Now that I think about it. We saw Joker October of 2019.
This is the first time I have been to the movies in a very long time.
Yeah, do you remember the last movie you saw in theaters?
I'd have to look it up.
Actually, now that I think about it, I think the last 2 movies we had actually seen Parasite together before the Academy Awards.
Right, but that was last year. Was it Harley
was like
Quinn?
January.
Was it Harley Quinn? Maybe that.
The Birds of Prey movie.
Yeah, excuse me.
I that was the last movie I saw in theaters. Funny enough, I was also one of 3 people then as well. In that theater, and that was like as kind of COVID was developing. That was about March, the first week of March. I saw that.
I am looking at a list of films that came out before things went horribly wrong.
Right.
I couldn't say. I never saw Onward.
Okay. But that kind of came out on Disney Plus at the same time.
It didn't get a theatrical release. I don't know. It's been a while. We finally went back yesterday, and it really, I gotta say, for me before COVID, I think you take things for granted, and I love going to the movies, so much so that we decided to make a podcast out of our love of film.
Right.
But I love going to the movies. I love the theater-going experience. There's definitely aspects of it I can't stand. Having to sit near people who talk a lot, who are on their phones. I didn't miss that.
Okay.
I didn't miss, dirty seats and stuff like that. But going back, sitting in a theater, having this massive screen, really feeling like the scope of trailers and stuff, I missed it, and it was good to have that back.
I'd agree. So we got a very lucky experience to see. Not only did we come back to the movies, like to a theater, but all right. So as we know, with all the COVID-19 standards, the theater itself was at 30% capacity, right? And then every other row was empty.
Yeah.
But still, we showed up to a sold out show, so there was still 100 people in this theater. About, I think, is around about the number. Though they told us that we'd have 2 seats between each party, each group, empty, to kind of keep up with social distancing. I will say that I was a little surprised when I saw that it was about only 1 seat in between each party that was empty.
It could have been better. I would say they could have maybe had half as many people in the theater, but for as many people as there were, I never ever had a feeling like anyone was like kind of like shoulder to shoulder with me, and I didn't feel unsafe in the theater.
I mean, everybody, for the most part, I saw a lot of people keeping their masks on, excluding when they were, snacking on whatever food and stuff. But I mean, and I didn't hear any coughing or sneezing, so I mean, I'm glad. And they did do temperature checks like beforehand.
I gotta say, they did handle it pretty well. They escorted us into the theater. Basically made sure we found our seats okay, which is a really refreshing change of pace when normally you would get, a bunch of like high school employees who really don't care all that much.
Yeah, the management at this theater really, they really outdid themselves in terms of that kind of level of customer service enforcement. I feel like I would commend him. He actually gave me a call. The manager gave me a call earlier in the day just to confirm everything, because I guess this is the first film they had shown in several months, and so this is maybe one of 6 showings of Tenet before I think it's released today or tomorrow. I
guess
September 3rd.
It'll be out tomorrow in wide release.
Yeah.
I say wide, but marginally better than it was yesterday.
Right. But I mean, just kind of I'll tell you what, it was nice. I was a little underwhelmed at certain parts, just like you'd think that having a certain audience or being in a theater with an audience would kind of gauge more reactions out of people, but we'll get into that in a bit.
It was pretty quiet as far as the audience was concerned.
I like how, and I like how you said earlier that you hate when people talk during movies. Then again, I love giving you small notes in movies, and you love giving me tiny notes during films.
I mean, I'm talking like we whisper to each other, but like
sure.
my big nitpick, if you want to call it that, is when I'm going to a theater and I sit down and I'm like, all right, I'm ready to see a movie. I'm gonna have a good time, and then I look to my right and there is a collection of about 7 people who are clearly all just the best of friends, but they are all coming in and they're all chatting and joking with each other, and I just die a little inside and go, oh my god, they're gonna be doing this the whole movie.
I think that happens to me when I went to see the last Harry Potter film on opening night.
If this can become, maybe a point of transition where maybe theater going experience is a little less disruptive, I'm game for that.
Yeah, but I mean, let's kind of going into it, I will say, being back in the theater, especially for this movie, was actually, I had a really great feeling, especially during, like, let's say the trailers, right?
Yes, and before, so the one other thing I did I forgot to mention, I can't put into words how nice it was, and again, going into like what you take for granted, but with the pandemic and the election coming up and everything in the world, the protests and the the terrible things you're hearing about, what the police have done and stuff, and just you're getting it from so many different things. It was nice to kind of escape for a couple of hours to kind of shut off the rest of the world and focus on a movie. Movies are really meant to be escapes from reality, and I feel like this is the first time in a long time where I really felt that, because reality has been a bit too intense lately.
I'd agree. That very well said.
Thank you.
I mean, so All right, I'm going to go back to it then.
Yeah.
Because I almost felt transported. I had a feeling that I haven't had in several years. And I'm going to start by asking you this question. Can you remember the last time you saw a trailer for a movie in the theaters before you saw it as a YouTube link?
No. I mean,
neither can I.
It would have to be. I'm trying to think because I know it might have been the trailer for Tenet. Actually, it might have been the teaser for Tenet, which was attached to another movie.
Funny enough, actually, now that I think about it, it might also have been Tenet for me as well. But I feel like even before that,
it was attached to Rise of Skywalker. I think they are saying, if I'm reading this correctly. But regardless,
fact checking will need to happen on that. But
either Rise of Skywalker or Joker or Harley Quinn, Birds of Prey. Excuse me. One of those, or all three of those, or none of those.
Okay, so I feel like I got that experience in this movie, and I was in a way. It's like I almost forgot. There's this movie coming out at the end of this year, or supposedly, entitled Dune, the long-awaited redux, if you will, by Denis Villeneuve. I said redux.
Yeah.
I meant readaptation. And we got a little bit of a teaser before the movie, and I couldn't believe my eyes. I'm like, oh my god! Like, did they announce this? I must have been completely lost. In the news because I was incredibly surprised.
You tapped me on the shoulder and you said, "Dude, I think we're gonna get the Dune trailer here," and I got so excited because I have been waiting for this movie. I love Denis Villeneuve in his films. I mean, I don't love him. I don't know him. But but I love his movies, and I'm sure. I think when we were coming up with ideas for script or screen episodes, I said, "Oh, Villeneuve." The cast in this looks amazing. Timothée Chalamet, Rebecca Ferguson, Oscar Isaacs, Josh Brolin, Stellan Skarsgård, Dave Bautista, Zendaya. You know, like there's so many people. Jason Momoa, Javier Bardem.
It'll be interesting to see how they juggle this cast and the importance of all these characters and their roles.
Yeah, they're gonna. I mean, if anyone could do it, I feel like Villeneuve has the chops. The scope of this movie from the trailer looks incredible.
Oh, it looks massive.
And I don't know, I'm so excited. If it gets released on time, it's coming out on my birthday. So that's also really exciting.
I think this is the third time you've mentioned your birthday on this show.
so for anyone listening that's curious, I have a birthday in like mid-December. So I usually have either a huge like blockbuster movie or a massive like awards baiting movie that comes out on or around my birthday.
I'll tell you what, you got really lucky the last 5 years with like most of the Star Wars movies coming out all around your birthday, excluding what, Solo?
Well, Solo, yeah, that was like in May, but we'll decide later on a later day if that was lucky or not.
Yeah.
but yeah, so Dune looks incredible. And I think we just saw a teaser for it. I think the teaser said that the full trailer is supposed to drop next week on the 9th.
That'll be exciting. And then everybody will get to see that. It won't just be us.
Yeah. Then we won't be special anymore.
I know. But then I think following that, and I guess a couple of other trailers, we finally get our feature presentation. In, I should say, 70 millimeter IMAX.
Oh, yes.
We went and acquired like the best of the best way. The way that this movie was apparently supposed to be seen, that the reason why it had been delayed 3 times and couldn't be released on home video. So I mean, let's get into it. What do you think about Tenet? What is Tenet?
Well, so first of all, we'll say I'm gonna take a look at the clock here. Let's talk for a little while, non-spoilers, just our general thoughts, and then we'll give a warning and we'll go into spoilers. So non-spoilery, if that horrible sound I just made.
Could you go into detail, please, sir?
Yes. Could I elaborate on my meh?
What did you mean when you said eh?
So okay. When I go into a Christopher Nolan movie, there's a lot of expectations I have because I feel like,
as we discussed about on our inaugural episode.
Yeah, I think he is such a good filmmaker that like I go in expecting really good quality, and while there were parts of this movie where I was like, "Whoa, that's really cool," and man, that's a fantastic little set piece you just did. I kind of walked away from this movie a bit underwhelmed.
Would the phrase "taken aback" be fitting?
Maybe. It left me just kind of shrugging. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't anywhere near as good as some of the highs that he has brought the world of cinema. But that is my personal opinion. How about you?
So, as we discussed about in our podcast of Christopher Nolan, I am a big fan of his work. The 4 movies we talked about, Batman Begins, The Prestige, Interstellar, and Dunkirk. Like, Interstellar meant a lot to me. All of his movies in a way meant a lot to me, but Interstellar specifically meant a lot to me. And the fact that I can go into this movie with that thought in mind, like, oh, is this going to be equally good or maybe even better than my favorite Nolan film? And then I come out thinking, oh my God, absolutely not. Kind of says a lot. And this movie has a lot of really cool and interesting things, like you said. Like, it's got a lot of interesting action. It's got a really interesting cast. But when you kind of look and see how all these kind of cogs in this big machine work together, I feel like a lot of the gears are not greased. It's just this thing needs a lot of maintenance.
I think
as his next, like Dunkirk was kind of like a step away from his regular, or Dunkirk, excuse me. I think you were talking to me before about my pronunciation.
You're doing it wrong.
Whatever. That format of storytelling was different from Interstellar or Inception or the last, several films that he's done. And then so Tenet was kind of like a return to like kind of more traditional, characters and things kind of going along the lines. But then I just felt like there was it just kind of lacked in a lot of areas. The concept of the film was interesting. So the plot says, or the
is there like
synopsis? I have a little synopsis as it follows a secret agent who must manipulate the flow of time in order to prevent World War III.
That is like the trailer, basically what the trailer told us, and I feel like the trailer kind of lied a bit. If I went off the trailer, I would think this was just a like kind of like a balls to the wall action movie, and it's really not. It's more of like an espionage thriller.
I feel like in a way that they talked about it being like an espionage or like compared to something like James Bond-esque. But in reality, I'd rather watch like Quantum of Solace over this movie. Anybody that doesn't know, Quantum of Solace of the new James Bond movies, I feel like is the one that lacks the most. I think is the overall consensus. Maybe Spectre.
Spectre.
I like Spectre.
Spectre is not a quality work of art, but it's at least fun to watch. This at times I was like, there's times when some of the action ratcheted up, and I was like, ooh, I'm feeling it. This is kind of cool, but there were probably just as many, if not more, moments where I was like, wait, hold on.
Yeah, I think there comes a time where they have to do between getting into characterizations, or going through all of those, and then kind of getting into the exposition and explaining concepts, and then you have to work your way into just some of like the action. And then, some of the spectacle that is included in this film as well. Like, it's just, it almost feels very disjointed, kind of going from one thing or to another, and then there's blatant points in the film where they tell you like don't worry about certain things, and you're like,
Well, how about this?
excuse me?
Yeah, we'll talk about that. How about this? Let's say right now I'm gonna give it a count of 10 or a count of 5, and I'm gonna say right now, spoiler warning. We are going into full on plot beginning to end spoilers on Tenet. So if you have not seen it, put this podcast on mute, so that way it plays all the way through. Go see the movie and then listen again. So, all right. So 5, 4, 3, 2,
You're good.
1. Spoilers.
Welcome to the spoiler cast. I'm your host, Chris.
I'm Zach. Welcome to Spoilers or Screen. So I don't know where you want to begin. I want to say
I would like to start at the beginning, if all possible.
Excuse me.
This film, and with that being in mind, does this film have a beginning or does it have an end?
So
or where does it go?
Let's talk about Nolan films and beginnings, because I talked to you about this. I think I said this when we were leaving the theater, but Nolan has a good habit, and most of the time it's great, of the movie starts. I'm thinking of things like Inception. I'm thinking of things like The Prestige, maybe even some of the Batman movies, where he drops you in on the deep end, and it takes a second for you to kind of tread water and figure out what's going on, but then you go, okay, I got it. You know, this beginning of this movie felt like he dropped you in the deep end with like a 50-pound weight just dragging you down.
Yeah.
And I feel like a good chunk of the movie I was struggling to just grab onto something to be like, what is going on?
So I'll say this, that I felt like I would liken this movie the most to Inception out of his other films. And I think most people would agree.
In that it is a high concept, sort of pseudo sci-fi caper.
Yeah. But it also kind of interesting shares a lot of aspects with like The Dark Knight Rises and I guess in a way Interstellar. Like those three films specifically.
It's a Nolan film.
Yeah. So when you're in the beginning of this film, it starts with us following John David Washington's character.
Real fast.
Not named.
Before we get into it, I want to touch on this.
Okay.
So this movie stars John David Washington, who I think did a reasonably good job on it. He's a very good actor. He is credited as the protagonist. He is joined by Robert Pattinson, who is credited as Neil, and Elizabeth Debicki, who is named Kat. And they go against a man named Andre Sator, who's played by Kenneth Branagh. Now, you may have noticed one of those characters, the main character, doesn't have a name. Everyone else has a name. I made a little mosey on over to IMDb to look at some stuff. Kat's son in the movie, who does not speak, has a name, Max. The Russian, I don't know what you would call him, like soldier or agent at the beginning of the movie, who is torturing John David Washington, his name is Quentin, and he's in 2 scenes of the movie. There are other characters named Toby and Timmy and Stuart and Rohan and Archibald, who are not even like tertiary characters in this movie.
Yeah.
And then you get to like stuff way down the list of like someone who plays Gaunt Russian or Tourist in Oslo or Red Soldier Number 2. Why is the main character of this movie given the same character name treatment as like background characters?
You know, I think I don't know why. And I really feel like that it also reflects a lot about how this character was written, which is such a shame because John David Washington, you know, though he's not, you know, he's an incredible actor. You know, like
he's really good.
I can't think if he had a role in between BlacKkKlansman and Tenet, But I know even coming off of Black Klansman, that was a fantastic performance. And talk about like like overall incredible movie. Oh, you know what? I think he did The Old Man and the Gun with Robert Redford. Funny enough.
And of course, he was in Ballers.
That's true. Oh, this the television series.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay, so I mean, like he's a really skilled actor. Like he's I don't know what else to say, man. Like
He's
just to see him in this and him given this role, like he has the physicality of this role.
He's good.
I feel like
he comes from
his
good
character,
stock.
He does. Like, and his character like is written with like an amount of American swagger that I could appreciate.
He
right?
has some
that he holds himself
pretty good line delivery in this movie. There's a few lines that actively made me like laugh pretty hard just because his delivery was so on point.
Exactly. But you know what? A lot of the other lines that he has in this movie really suck.
Yeah.
Just in general. And they make his character like he's supposed to be the CIA agent, not gentleman spy per se, but like this really well-trained person. And it's like, oh, he didn't take any intelligence classes or something? Like, are you a CIA besides like being able to, kick ass and shoot a gun?
Well, I'll say this:
do all these things.
None of this is John David Washington. This is all the movie. John David Washington is having to play the role.
Exactly, and I just feel like it sucks that his role in a way was kind of discounted by the treatment of his character in its script.
So let's go back to the beginning, because that opening part where protagonist goes to extract this guy from this opera performance.
Well, we should say that it didn't even begin. He didn't even identify himself as the protagonist till a little bit later.
No,
in the film.
but I'm referring to him as he is credited in the movie as the protagonist.
Gotcha. Okay.
So yeah, the protagonist, and I'm gonna keep emphasizing it like that. The protagonist goes and he extracts this guy, and he finds this weird block, and he's like, what is this? It's our mystery
this
box
artifact, if you will. Yeah.
And there's some cool storytelling devices there, where like when they're in this in the van, like right before they like rush in with the rest of the SWAT. Rush in, that pun was not intended, but sorry, it takes place in Russia. But like there's cool stuff where it's like they're like all right, you guys are gonna go, and they hand them some like patches to slap on their thing, or I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. They have like a bunch of these patches depending on
what organization's going in, like, oh, so they can match them.
I liked that stuff where you go like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool.
I was into this. They were like infiltrating this, like a terrorist group had took over this opera house, and they were just, they were after this guy. But as the scene progresses, and then you see the protagonist kind of like the way he infiltrates the police, and he gets his target and he gets out of there. But you also see like where the mistakes have been made, like he notices the bombs and stuff. But then his kind of life is saved by this other mystery box, you could say. His first encounter with how would you call it? The
inversion,
the inverted soldier.
Yeah.
And then you get your first question of like, what the hell was that? And then you get an identifier on this inverted soldier too, this little red tag or something. That they make a not a subtle note, but you should note that it's there.
Right.
It's important.
Now, I mean, I think all of this is pretty cool setup. Like, from that point, I almost liked how little the movie was telling me, because it was just like I was along for the ride. I was seeing where it happened. There were times where it's like, okay, well, you're going to go. He, if we, kind of just skip ahead a little bit, he gets captured by these Russians, and he is tortured, and then eventually he's tortured by Quentin, the Russian, who gets a name and he doesn't, but he is able to sneak a cyanide pill, and he dies, except he doesn't, because it was all just a test to prove that he had the chutzpah to carry out the mission. And it's from there that he is told that there is a word and a gesture. The word is tenet. The gesture is hands laced together in front of his chest. And from there, he's like, all right, you go and meet this person, right? And I liked that the movie had these cool, like, things of, like, okay, he gets taken to this wind turbine in the middle of the ocean, and he goes inside, and inside is like a uniform waiting for him, but in the meantime he's just kind of chilling there. So when a boat shows up, he kind of knows, okay, I need to put this uniform on. He takes the boat, and when the boat goes to a port and docks, he gets out, and there's just a guy who's getting out of a car, and it's like, okay, I get in this car, and there's already an address loaded into the GPS. I'm gonna go to this address, and it was
it's very spy-esque, James Bond. Like there's a system, and he was playing into it, and he knows the drill.
I really dug it because I was like, okay, like, you know, this stuff's kind of coming at me rapid fire, but I'm not having any trouble following it. I thought it was really cool. It was a very interesting way to kind of just feed me the story.
I'll tell you what my biggest complaint with that opening scene, though, is that after he takes the cyanide pill and wakes up, the first 5 to 10 minutes it becomes inconsequential.
Yeah,
he starts talking about like, oh, my teammates, like, oh, they all died.
Yeah, and he he sheds a tear.
And I'm like, what does it matter if they all died or not? Like, number one, like, why it just...
I think they were trying to establish that he has a very good...
Like, he has the vigor, he has the panache.
I was going to say, like, he has a bit of humanity, because later in the movie, he is very... Like, the big, like, moral question for him that Elizabeth Debicki very not subtly addresses is that he doesn't care about the people. He just cares about the mission and what's going to happen to her and her child, and does he even really care and stuff. And so this is a bit to show, like, yeah, he does. And
I guess it was just, maybe that's my nitpick, but I mean, just like, okay, like, I guess it was all cool action, and you get to see like his performance, but like,
I don't know about
I feel like that portion could have been skipped over. Like, it didn't, I
don't know about you, but there is a identifiable moment I feel that this movie stopped trying.
Oh, okay. It's following up in our, after he does all the regulatory, he's at his new location, and he meets this lady.
Okay, hold on. Hold on. She has a name. I'm going to make it a point to tell you her name because it's important, because he doesn't get a name.
Okay.
Her name is, I believe, Barbara. Her name is Barbara.
Okay, thank you, Zach. So we're then introduced to Barbara, who begins to introduce the protagonist to this world of inversion and the concept of time travel and the thing that made me want to vomit. This movie has no respect for the theory of time travel, and I will tell you why, Zach. It's because they tried to say like, oh, it's a reaction. Or it's a result of the neutrons and the protons and the chemistry of the nuclear fission mixed with the physics. Oh, and don't try to understand it. It just works.
That is the line that I wanted to give up on this movie when it was like, don't try to understand it. Or it said, oh, wait, hold, excuse me.
I'm like, you're going to give me all that science. You're going to give me 2 great movies where you're able to give me all the exposition in the world about black holes and then dreaming within dreams. But when it comes to inversion, don't understand it. Just let it happen.
Yeah, I just
excuse me?
So, like, we're talking about Christopher Nolan, the man who invented Inception. Now, you go through Inception, and maybe when you're watching it, not every part of it makes sense. But by the end of it, you're like, no, I totally get it. It makes sense. I understand how the time dilation in deeper dream levels is. I understand how like the subconscious fights back stuff. I get it.
I mean, they even do a great job of trying to explain relativity to people, like in Interstellar, like between planets and worlds, and like also how like wormholes work and everything. But when it comes to
so for this movie, God. I feel like it needed more time. I feel like Nolan claims that he has had this idea for like 20-something years, and that he has been working on this particular version of it for about 6 to 7 years. I don't believe him. Mm-hmm. And like, I feel like this needed to bake for another like few years, because to unironically look at your audience and say, don't try to understand it, tells me that they don't understand it.
Yeah, I would agree. I just feel like there was a lot of there was maybe not enough oversight over the one thing in your movie that you're supposed to explain to everybody how it works. Because I think there were several times in this movie where I looked over to you like, do you know what the fuck's happening right now? And we both shook our heads like, what is going on? And what sucks is that he's such a talented filmmaker.
Yeah.
You know, like, in reality he is. So, like, why? There is no excuse for something like this. You know? Like, in reality, it's the most upsetting thing. Like, overall, like, your one concept, your core concept, you couldn't just try to make that a little more thorough.
Yeah.
You know, because it created a not plot holes in his film. It helps create interesting things, but, like, you know, you discounted your audience and their attention span and their intelligence by just saying, don't try to think about it.
Yeah,
like,
I just, like, there's
what
times...
an insult.
There are times where I feel like you can get away with that kind of blasé attitude, like in, what was Avengers Endgame. I'm not saying that this movie is better than that movie or anything, but in Endgame, they're like, don't try and think about it too hard, because it's not the point. But inversion in this movie is the point. It is the central conflict that the movie is built upon. So when they're like, yeah, it's the central conflict, but don't think about it too hard or you'll give yourself a little headache.
I'll tell you what, Bruce Banner and what was her name?
Nebula?
In Endgame. No, in Endgame, Bruce Banner goes back in time to speak with...
the Ancient One?
The Ancient One, that's her name. And they did a great job discussing... They did a great job condensing and saying the simplest form of how time travel works to everybody.
I'll tell you why the time travel... I'll tell you why the time travel in this movie wasn't great. It's because it wasn't really time travel. The whole idea of inversion is that it is things moving forwards and backwards through entropy, as they call it, through time.
Mm-hmm.
Entropy being, I think, the second law of thermodynamics. If my overnight, research taught me anything. But, yeah, it's just, I don't know. The core mechanic of your movie doesn't work the way you think it does. I think you got a problem.
I'd agree.
And then it leads to a whole host of issues where they're like, okay, well, we got to go and do this thing. Why? Well, because of this. All right, I guess that makes sense, but I'm kind of just... There were plenty of moments of this movie where I was like, okay, I guess we're going to this place for something, which was frustrating. I feel like I noticed a lot of the so I want to refer back to Marvel movies, especially Civil War. You have moments where they go to Venice or they go to Geneva. I said Venice. That's not true. They didn't do that in Civil War, but it's like they do that in Spider-Man: Far From Home.
Yeah, but it showed every location they went to, and it did stamp the name on it, and it kind of they went to a lot of different locations in Civil War. So in a way, it got annoying, but at least you knew.
Well,
versus this movie,
I'm okay.
This movie, there's walk and talks, and they're going everywhere just to finish a sentence and everything. There was no. It just seemed like there was a lot of movement for almost not no reason, but there were places where they could have sat and had a conversation.
Yeah, there are points where it's like, okay, we're in Mumbai, now we're going to London, now we're going to Oslo, now I have to go back to Mumbai, and it's I feel like
for a guy who
movie
takes time for his exposition, he didn't take much time to. I feel like he almost had ADD in the way. His exposition had to move around.
This movie is needlessly complicated. Needlessly complicated. I talked to you about this a little bit before we recorded, but Elizabeth Debicki's character, Kat, she is talking to the protagonist, and she's explaining to him that Sator, Kenneth Branagh, who was pretty good in the movie.
He was the best character in the film. I
typically am not a huge fan of Kenneth Branagh, the actor. I like more Kenneth Branagh, the director. But I think he did pretty well with this role here. His very almost deliciously evil.
I was going to say he's the only character in this who I feel like was the most well thought out.
But
versus the other ones.
Yeah, he was pretty good. But like, Kat is explaining to the protagonist that, well, she doesn't love her husband because he won't let her get to their son because she is being blackmailed by him because she sold him a counterfeit of a painting of an artist that he likes. And it's so like, I feel like so many steps removed from what it needs to be. Like, I would have accepted that he was just a really shitty dude, that he was this like Russian oligarch, arms dealer, warmonger who is just a terrible person because he's power hungry, because he is. And that would have been enough for me to be like, oh, I empathize with Kat and her plight because I understand how much of a bad guy he is. But of course they needed a reason for them to go to Oslo and have a admittedly very cool set piece in the free port of Oslo. I liked that scene. It was cool.
I mentioned this to you earlier. Did you like the exposition about how free ports work and why they're supposed to be important, and just like all the fun fact information?
Yeah, it was wonderful. And then like I like
very
how
educational.
I like how the guide was like, oh yes, everything. Once the alarms trip, you have 10 seconds to get inside before the
toxic gas consumes all the oxygen in the room.
And then it happens, and the door closes in about 2 seconds. And I'm like, well, so much for that. If we're just not paying attention to rules, and I don't want to go too long on all my griping about this movie, because there was a few things I liked. I did make a note on my phone of say some nice things. But
I mean, any other notes on the plot itself?
The plot, I feel like it was, I don't know the timestamp in the movie, but it's the point when the protagonist goes through the turnstile, and then he's like, I need to go back. I know where the algorithm is or whatever, and I can make this right. And when he goes back, and it's that scene of him going into the inverted world where everything's flowing backwards, I thought that was really cool. And then I think you and I both kind of had that in unison moment of like where the pieces kind of clicked together, and we said, oh, I know how this all ties into what we've seen before.
Yeah,
and that felt great, because we had been given enough information to draw make the connections, draw our conclusions on our own, and that was really cool. And it was probably the only time in the movie where I was excited, where I was like, ooh, but like, aside from that, like, listen, if I walk away from this movie thinking one thing, it's that, yes, Christopher Nolan, things in reverse do sometimes look cool. When explosions are kind of like curling in on themselves, and like, it's cool to see. But also regular forward-moving explosions are also cool. So what's separating him from like Michael Bay? I'm being needlessly cruel. But the one thing I want to say, I thought I was crazy when I was watching the movie. I talked to you about this. I listened to a bunch of reviews. I read a bunch of reviews, and I've come to the conclusion, Chris, that I am not crazy. The sound mixing in this movie is terrible.
So, yeah, in terms of the technical fidelity of this movie, the sound was interesting. And at first I thought it was because, we're in like an IMAX theater, right? And there's like subwoofers and like surround sound, and they do a good job in the beginning of the movie to show you like, oh, this was what movies used to sound like, and now you're in the best experience ever. But there were some weird points in the movie. I felt like there's a scene specifically that I thought how the sound was played and mixed was really, it was jarring, but I kind of liked it in a way. It was they're in the protagonist was captured, and then our bad guy, played by Kenneth Branagh, or Sator, whatever you want to call him,
right?
Is threatening to shoot cat in the inverted world,
Mm-hmm.
and so they're talking through the glass, and it's kind of like reverse speech, and they have to do that. Was like maybe the coolest scene in the entire film. I'll say that much. I was into that.
It was
because it was really
interesting.
confusing to figure it out. And that's what brought me into it. But yeah, I know you had talked about like just understanding certain things. It almost felt like dialogue was being drowned out, and just like noise in general, the ambience and the music and everything was just like hankering down on everything. And you were like, what is going on here?
Yeah, there were definitely moments where like they have two characters walking down the street or talking in a lobby or something, or in a restaurant, and there's so much ambient diegetic noise that it drowns things out. And I feel like there are so many points where the characters are talking and I am not hearing half of what they are saying, and it's usually really important stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, in my research on the movie, I found this quote from Christopher Nolan regarding the sound in his movies, and he says, "I don't agree with the idea that you can only achieve clarity through dialogue. Clarity of story, clarity of emotions. I try to achieve that in a very layered way, using all different things at my disposal, picture and sound. I've always loved films that approach sound in an impressionistic way, and that is an unusual approach for a mainstream blockbuster, but I feel it's the right approach for this experiential film."
I disagree.
Yeah, like, okay, I am all for Nolan doing cool things and messing with things to get a cool result, because that's how we find out things work, and that's how you get really unique things. But for a movie where you have a very central conceit, a very specific set of rules that needs to be understood, so that way your action is coherent and the stakes of your conflict are well understood.
Mm-hmm.
It needed more. It needed clearer dialogue, and it needed more dialogue.
Like it would have been okay if the concepts were like already understood, and maybe how like some films already like input, like not transitions, but like captions, like in certain moments. Like,
Sure.
What if they had like reverse captions on screen during those moments, or something? I don't know, something to give the audience an idea of like, why is there such a weirdness going on when I listen to this movie? My brain does not comprehend.
I just think
this.
that like and then there was another quote, I don't have it, but it was by one of his one of the people who works with the sound for his movies, and he has said that in his more recent films, Christopher Nolan has really cultivated this idea of when speaking of dialogue specifically, what the characters are saying really doesn't matter so long as the idea gets conveyed properly. So you can get away with a gist of what has been said, and that's enough. And I hate that.
I was going to say I disagree.
Because at that point, why even have dialogue at all? Why not just have our characters grunting at each other?
You think you could watch Tenet if there were no dialogue?
No,
and it was just all grunts and oh god.
And I don't know. I felt like this movie needed. I can't wait till this movie is on home media, on Blu-ray or on demand, for me to watch from the comfort of my couch in an environment that I can control the sound, because this way it was meant to be seen by Nolan, in a theater, in IMAX, it soured the experience for me a little bit, because I spent most of the movie going, why are we here? I guess it doesn't matter. Okay.
Right. Yeah, I just felt like that. I mean, I don't think I had as much of an issue with the sound as you did, but I did recognize at what points in the film I felt like the sound wasn't, there was something weird going on, at least from an audience perspective.
Yeah.
But I just feel like in general, this, like I said, this movie has a lot of issues in a lot of different areas. Like there's just there's just too much.
Yeah.
And in continuing with sound, I do want to talk about the score of this film.
Ooh,
right?
by Ludwig Göransson.
Yes, this is the first movie that Nolan's done, I think, not in his entire career, but like at least the last 10, 15 years, that Hans Zimmer hasn't scored the film, right? And that's because Hans Zimmer has been busy scoring Dune.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with Ludwig's sound, right? He's known for his collaborations with Donald Glover's Childish Gambino
Right.
albums. He's done The Mandalorian most recently.
Yep.
He has a good relationship with Ryan Coogler doing Black Panther,
Yep.
Creed, and then just a couple of other films. I just feel like the sound of this movie, while very good, or just the composition, the scoring, the music,
it had some really good moments.
it really did. But I just did not feel like the type of sound fit the movie as a whole.
It was a bit generic.
I wouldn't even say generic, but it's just, the sound of this film was very cyberpunk-esque in a way, right? I had that kind of digital aesthetic that most, I wouldn't say most of his music makes, but it just wasn't fitting. It's not spy film, it's not espionage. It's not that same kind of action thriller in a way. And maybe there was supposed to be a contrast there, and I just don't feel like it really stuck its landing.
I feel like they could have found a way to incorporate it more in the themes of the movie, like in Dunkirk, how Zimmer's score it used the motif of a ticking clock because it was all about it was all about time, and it was all about kind of like waiting for this, either waiting for salvation or waiting for doom. And and so I wish that this, if they had like done stuff, and I don't know, I'd have to go back and listen to it, but I didn't detect this, but if they had done stuff like kind of maybe having like reversed music sounds, that could have been unique and cool. Or
I agree, that actually would have been awesome.
Maybe inverted instrumental sounds. I'm not saying these would have solved the movie's glaring problems, but
I also don't want to say, like, it's not a terrible thing that he was being inventive with the genre, right? Like giving a different approach to a genre that already has like well-established themes and music and just of the sort. Like, I don't want to stop the creativity there.
I will never say no to experimentation and creativity, but I think there was a fear on my part, I don't know about you, maybe with you as well, that going into this movie, Nolan would focus way too much on ideas and less on presenting a conflict that we care about because of the characters who are in it.
Maybe I went into this film, I go into most movies very hopeful. I set my expectations kind of high for a lot of things. I do. And I didn't really have many fears. I thought this movie was going to be fantastic. I obviously am, and I was kind of very just disappointed in general, like with how a lot of the things came out. Like, it was still entertaining overall, but I don't, I just don't think this movie, it was not what I wished it was.
Yeah. There's a lot of points where I had the same thought. But I do want to not make this a total shit on Nolan fest, so I do want to say some nice things. One of the things was Ludwig Göransson. I think his score was better than other aspects of the movie. I thought John David Washington, he had some pretty good action scenes. He delivered maybe the funniest line in the movie when he said, "I ordered my hot sauce an hour ago."
He proceeded to bash plates against people's heads.
I think I burst out laughing when I heard that. I
want to circle back to that for a second, because you know what? As funny and as great as his character was, like, the fact that you couldn't, he would go up to people and he'd be like, "If you're trying to be a billionaire, you shouldn't wear a Brooks Brothers suit." He's like, "I'll take care of that." And, if he thinks he's going up to someone, it's like, "Oh, you spent $9 million going to Vietnam?" Like, "Oh, you're obviously not a rich person, so I don't know who you are." Like, he did not play the part of, being an intelligence agent and knowing how to act the roles of which he was playing. Like, where was the disparity there? Like, why?
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of moments where you leaned over and you said, "This guy is a terrible secret agent."
Yeah. Well, I said, I think the exact words I said was, "Why is he the worst secret agent ever?"
Like, yeah. I feel like there's with like these like this genre, there's always the idea of the person who's undercover, just you kind of fake it till you make it, and he just never makes it.
And I'm like, just why though? Like, there was no reason why that should have been part. Like, why was that a part of his character? Why was that written to be in there? Like,
I think it was meant to humanize him, because there's nothing else in this movie that humanizes people. They set up all these things where you go like, oh man, we were best friends. I'm looking, for you, it's the end of a beautiful relationship, but for me, it's just the beginning. And I said, a beautiful relationship? Like, you guys have barely spoken to each other in this movie.
Well, I know we haven't really touched a lot about Robert Pattinson, or touched much on him, but his role, his character was good, interesting. I just also was like, yeah, he's just kind of there.
He was just kind of there.
Like, good performer, great actor, but it's like
he had great moments. Like, in a way,
like, I feel like all the characters in a way were just kind of there. The only reason why I feel like the antagonist is maybe the strongest character is because they gave him just a lot of information.
They gave him
background.
Exactly.
They gave him, like, they didn't make you sympathize him with it in a way, but like he got to reveal like how, why he thinks he needs to do the way he needs to do. Speaking of which, we kind of went over a very big point, Zach, and I want to go back to it because how dare we? When rereading the plot for this podcast, I need to say this because I don't remember where in the film they talk about this. On the Wikipedia, someone wrote in the protagonist boss points him to the secret organization called Tenet, leading him to Laura, a scientist studying bullets whose entropy has been inverted. Yada yada yada. I got it. The protagonist meets with Sator. No. It's a sentence.
It's when he meets with Priya, right?
Priya, yeah. The protagonist traces the bullet to Priya Singh, a Mumbai arms dealer and a member of Tenet. With help of Neil, a supposed local, the protagonist infiltrates Priya's compound, learns about the bullets. Oh, where is this piece?
Basically, the reveal is that
I found it. It says Priya explains the artifacts are parts of future developed algorithm capable of catastrophically inverting the world, and future humans are using Sator to activate it in order to prevent the effects of global warming.
I swear to God, that never is said in the movie.
I'm like, what? Global warming? What movie am I watching?
Oh my God, yeah. I like I said, I got to see the movie again in an environment.
I'll tell you what. I mean, listen. I'm a believer in global warming, right?
Yeah, me too.
I'm not no flat earther or nothing. None of that. But the fact, I mean, I feel like maybe bringing in that kind of storyline would have made it for a better plot than what. Here's
the thing. I can accept that. Hey, everything inverting eventually is going to be really bad because then all time gets reversed and things just get set back to zero, and that's not good. I'm willing to accept that as a big problem. I don't even know where global warming tied into it all, but I don't know. Just by the end. Like, even by the end when they go into this temporal pincer, I wrote this down, right? Temporal pincer, I don't understand how it works. Because they say, okay, we got two teams. One team's going forward in time, one team is inverted. There's a blue...
The idea that a pincer is like two ends, like
right.
Like,
no, I understand that. And the whole idea is that one side is they're both creating this massive diversion, so that way a splinter cell can go in, the splinter cell being Ives, played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, and the protagonist, go in to find the artifact and extract it before Sator kills himself. And... they go in, right? So, okay, half the team does this be going normal, half the team is inverted. But the people who are inverted, when they land, they're like, reversing out of their helicopter, like wounded and battered, and then they're like sucking up bullets and wreckage from all around, where it's like, because they're inverted. But I'm like, how did the bullets already get there if they weren't there to begin with? And they're undoing damage that's already there by who?
It is a result of what the fuck was going on in this plot. Why isn't your main mechanic working?
And I guarantee
why didn't you go ahead and explain
I guarantee you, someone's going to listen to this, and someone's going to be like, actually, if you pay attention to minute 57...
oh my god.
Yeah. Listen, this movie has moments where I was like, oh, I'm on board, I get it, but it was like an hour and a half into the movie. I stopped playing Final Fantasy 13 because someone told me it gets good after 80 hours. And I said, no. I shouldn't have to wait that long to be rewarded for my patience.
I feel like when I was getting into the Breaking Bad, the television series, which is very good and everybody should watch, someone told me, oh, you need to keep watching after seasons 2 and 3 because it gets good. But I felt like I was pretty established into the series, like, 1 through 5, I felt like each season was pretty great. When people tell me that there were some slower episodes, I didn't understand. What the point I'm trying to make is, I agree with you. You shouldn't have to wait that long, and I don't think things like that should matter. It should be good from the beginning, like most things.
And it's weird because it kind of was really good at the beginning.
What's weird? Yeah, it was good, but then it inverted itself to being not good, and then it reverted itself.
I get it.
Yeah. But I mean, all right, So overall, Zach, what final thoughts on the film? What do you think?
I did not hate this movie, but it's definitely more frustrating than some movies that I actually hate. Because I want to love this movie. I want to love everything that Christopher Nolan makes. And I don't know. If I had to give it a number, like out of 10, it's a 6 out of 10 for me. It's not trash, but I just there's not enough. There's not enough to grab onto.
And where would you rank this in terms of like your favorite Nolan films? Where would this one be?
Not very high. I don't know. It's I wanted it to be like up top with like Prestige and Dark Knight.
Yeah,
but
we'll remember that this is just our first viewing, and maybe we'll revisit this later on after we get it in and everything.
As it stands now, I like it less than Interstellar. I don't know.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So
score 1 for Interstellar.
There we go. For me, I would agree. I like Interstellar way more than this. In fact, Interstellar is still like my number one. With all of Interstellar's problems, right? That we talked about.
Listen, Interstellar might be a flawed movie, but it had character, and I at least understood the motivations of each person, and could say, yes, I may not agree with you, but I know why you're doing it, and I feel your emotion. Tenet is a career low for Christopher Nolan's character writing.
I would agree. This one I feel like ranks lower than following Memento. I feel like this is his. What sucks, it's kind of like his worst movie. But it's just like, does he really have bad movies? At
least upon this first viewing, it might be the worst film I've seen by him. I'll have to watch it.
Yeah, that's not to say I don't like certain things about the movie.
No, it had great moments. I don't know what else to say. I thought the acting, as much as it was, kind of awkward at times, I thought the acting, was good. I thought the action was good. I thought a lot of the shots that made good use of the IMAX were stunning. But all of these things, the movie was not greater than the sum of its parts.
I agree, and I feel like the sum of its parts had also lacked.
Also, really choppy editing. I'm not going to go into it, but the whoever was cutting this movie was kind of all over the place, and I feel like this movie had a bit of like ADD
Well, hold
going
on.
on.
Put your money where your mouth is. Jennifer
Uh-oh.
Lame. I don't know if it's Lame or LeMay.
Where are you saying this?
She's the editor of the film. The last films she edited actually were Marriage Story, Midsommar, Hereditary, the Merwood Stories. Oh, she edited Manchester by the Sea.
Okay, well,
I love that movie.
Jennifer Lame, I don't know why you suddenly decided that this movie needed borderline epileptic editing, but like I feel like you overused shot reverse shot in this. I feel like there were parts where characters are sitting down and then in the next shot they're standing up. It's just a little sloppy. It's not reflective of Nolan's best work.
I'll tell you what, Jennifer, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. This movie had better editing than Bohemian Rhapsody.
I mean, that's setting the bar pretty low.
Okay, it had better editing than
Taken 2.
Also, bar is very low there.
You know,
It had okay editing.
It was not the most egregious problem in this movie. I'm gonna have to watch it a few times more to really let everything sink in. I might watch it a second time and be like, oh no, it totally flows better once you know what's going on and stuff. It's fine, but at least
agree. So
when I finished Inception for the first time, I was like, oh no, I totally got that. I feel fulfilled having watched that. With Tenet, I'm just like, I feel empty and sad.
So, final question. Will you watch it again in theaters?
Probably not.
Well then.
How about you?
I think I thought, am I going to show this to my girlfriend? And the answer is, I'm going to wait till it's on HBO Max or something.
Yeah.
And so I think with that...
Oh, one last thing. I feel like if you go into this movie expecting like a typical time travel thing, you might be disappointed. So I'd like to offer you maybe an alternative if you're looking for a real good time travel movie. I don't know if you've seen this one, Chris, but Primer. It's a really cool, very realistic look at time travel. Very, very science-heavy, not action or not high spectacle movie. But it's really cool, very fascinating. As far as time travel and the concepts of it are concerned. That's my recommendation to you.
I have two recommendations for time travel movies. One I'm sure you've seen. The other one I don't know if you have. And they're less of technical time travel, but more movies. The first one being Back to the Future.
Oh yeah. That's a little known time travel
movie. And then the other one is more of I guess you call it kind of like a rom-com, but it touches my heart every time I watch it. It's called About Time, featuring Donald Gleason and Bill Nye, and their relationship as father and son, and how this kid comes from a family of time travelers. I guess he's a man then. He's not a child anymore. Anyways, those are my recommendations to you. Very easygoing, fun movies. Thank you for tuning in to Script or Screen.
Yes, thank you.
Go see Tenet. Let us know your thoughts. Are we wrong? Are we right?
Are we?
Do you agree?
Do we have any idea what we're talking about? I ask myself these questions every day. Maybe you can be the one to answer them.
If anyone could tell me the exact moment in the movie in which they say global warming is the issue, I would really, please. I just can't believe I read that.
Yeah.
I think please follow us on our social media pages. We're Script or Screen on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. My name is Chris Kitchen.
I am Zach Strackman.
Thank you for listening, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Bye.